Sorry about. All right, sorry about that. So I had to hit the recording. Sorry about that. So anyway, without further ado, I'll turn over to my partner, Ted Noor, who introduced today's speaker.
Good morning, folks. I'm glad to be here. And I'm going to introduce Alan Cohen. And Alan, I guess I met, I think, for the first time at this year's SABR Malloy conference, although I've seen him on here and elsewhere. He's the vice president and treasurer of the Smoky Joe Woods SABR chapter in Connecticut. He also chairs SABR's Bio-Project fact-checking. So it's good that Trump or Harris aren't here because he could fact check. He's also a data caster for the Hartford Yard Goats, and his bios, game stories, and essays have appeared in over 70 SABR publications. And near and dear to my heart, he finished fourth in this year's SABR Malloy Significa contest, and it's my understanding that one of the final three has retired. So Alan is in the catbird seat for this year's Significant contest. It's all yours, Alan.
Okay, thank you very much, Ted. I have been working on Josh Gibson for a while now, and let's get into it. There we go. This is Josh Gibson in 1937. This is his first year with the Homestead Grays. Well, I should say back with the Homestead Grays. He had been with the Pittsburgh Crawfords from 1932 through 1936. And due to any number of things going on in 1937, such as the Crawfords losing many players to the Dominican Republic, the Crawfords needed bodies, so they gave up their best player, Gibson, to the Grays in return for 4 lesser players. Jimmy Powers, the great writer for the New York Daily News, was championing the cause of integration. And he wrote an article on September 1837, his column, and he says, for batting exhibit A, I give you the unbelievable Josh Gibson, catcher for the Homestead Grays. Josh missed immortality and a chance to endorse breakfast food by being born on the wrong side of the social structure. Ask McManus at Yankee Stadium if Josh didn't haul off and smite the longest ball ever to take place in the park's history. A commercial air pilot says the ball whizzed past him over Bellefontaine, Pennsylvania, took a bad hop on a thundercloud, and broke one of St. Peter's window panes. Yes, there is a bit of hyperbole in all of this, and there's myth and legend and everything else with Josh Gibson. Myth, majesty, and mystery. Here are a few things that over the years in doing Negro League research, I saw about Josh Gibson. Josh Gibson hit the only fair ball completely out of Yankee Stadium. Did he? Josh Gibson hit 2 fair balls completely out of Griffith Stadium. Did he? Josh Gibson in one season at Griffith Stadium in 1943 hit more home runs than were hit by the 7 visiting American League teams, all combined. Did he? Josh Gibson homered in every big league ballpark in which he played, and he played in 20 of them. Did he? And Josh Gibson hit 800 home runs. It says so on his Hall of Fame plaque. Did he? Even his first appearance was somewhat of a mystery. But before we go to that first appearance, let's say something about the record. Josh Gibson has hit 419 home runs. Subject to our finding more, And interestingly enough, that number, when I originally did this presentation earlier this year, that number was under 400. So we keep finding home runs all the time. In 1943, Gibson had 10 homers at Griffith Stadium in 38 games. The visiting AL teams had 14, and they played twice that number of games, and everybody was hitting. The Washington Senators had only 9 homers, which was a big year for them. He had 29 career home runs in approximately 160 games at Griffith Stadium, and only one. That was on July 16th, 1939, when completely out of the park. And he led the Negro League, National League in homers 11 times. Per seam heads, he had 246 homers. And his all-inclusive career batting average was 366 in 939 games. I will say that the gap between the 246 games and the higher number I have and the still higher number that is speculated is caused by seam heads only posting stats for games for which there are box scores, and we have tragically few box scores, maybe half of the games, if that, have box scores. The answers to the other questions that I've posed will come as we take a tour throughout the big league ballparks in which Josh Gibson played. Here's the itinerary. I'm sort of like a tour guide here. We're going to start at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, a home of the Homestead Grays, or one of the homes of the Homestead Grays. And then we're going to wind up in Comiskey Park, home of the East-West game for many, many years. Well, it all started for Josh Gibson with the Homestead Grays in 1930. Legend says he came out of the stands to replace Buck Ewing, who had been injured on July 25th, 1930. Another story said he was in the ballpark, in the dugout, but wearing street clothes. And some say he made his debut in another game. It really isn't known specifically what happened. Much speculation. On July 25th, in that game at Forbes Field, the Grays beat the Monarchs 6-5. It was the second night game in the history of Forbes Field, the first game having been between the Monarchs and the Grays 1 week earlier. On August 22nd, 1930, Josh Gibson had his first home run with the Grays. It was off Albert Davis of the Detroit Stars in a game in Akron at League Park, the AAA or AA ballpark, minor league in Akron. It was one of 7 homers that he hit in Akron, making it one of his favorite stops. On September 13th, 30, he had his first Forbes Field homer. He homered twice in a doubleheader that day. It's not here, but on September 15th, he hit a home run too, which was I just recently discovered. Seamheads recently discovered it. And on the eve of the Malloy Conference, as a matter of fact. It was hard to find the article. The game on September 15th took place in Wilmington, Delaware, and the article in the Pittsburgh paper said that the Pittsburgh catcher had hit a home run, did not mention him by name. That would end very shortly. Gibson had 9 home runs in 1930, and he homered 14 times at Forbes Field, which made it Forbes Field his 3rd most productive ballpark for home runs. At the end of the 1930 season, the Lincoln Giants played the Homestead Grays in a series for a championship series. Neither team was in a league that year, although the Negro National League did play that year. But both Homestead and Lincoln were barnstorming teams. The teams played 10 games against each other, starting at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh and ending up at Yankee Stadium. The 2 games at Forbes Field, the Grays won them both. In the opener, Oscar Charleston homered, and in the second game, Gibson homered and tripled, and the Grays won it in 10 innings, 17-16. The teams split a doubleheader on September 21st at Yankee Stadium, where Gibson singled and doubled, and then they went on to Philadelphia. And Josh Gibson became known over the next couple of days to the greater public. He hit 2 big home runs. He was only 18 years old. On September 25th in Philadelphia, and this is per the Philadelphia Tribune, he hit the longest home run ever seen at Bigler Field, located 13th Street and Bigler Streets, the ball clearing the left field fence and even the roofs across Bigler Street. On September 27th at Yankee Stadium, Gibson hit the longest home run, this is per the Baltimore Afro-American and other black weeklies, the longest home run that has been hit at the Yankee Stadium by any player, white or colored, all season. Now, this is the big home run they talk about. Did it go out of Yankee Stadium? There is no conclusive evidence that the ball went clearly out of Yankee Stadium. Indications are that it landed at the rear of the bleachers and either bounced into the visitors' bullpen or over the rear fence and out of the ballpark. Again, we just don't know. More about that home run. The Grays won the second game of the doubleheader against the Lincoln Giants on September 27th to go up 5-3 in the series. In the first inning of that second game against Connie Richter, Gibson hit the home run into the bleachers. It was his 4th homer of the 10-game post-game series and his 2nd at Yankee Stadium. He had hit one in the first game that day. The home run, the longest ever hit at Yankee Stadium. He was the first player ever to hit the ball into those bleachers, which were more than 450 feet from home plate. Babe Ruth didn't put a ball there. He hit his balls to right field, same with Gehrig. Even when I was a kid growing up, it was rare for a ball to go into those seats. The next person to hit a home run into those bleachers was Hank Greenberg around 1937 or 1938. On September 28th, the Grays won the championship. Again, they were playing at Yankee Stadium. Gibson did contribute to the victory on the 28th, but he did not hit a home run that day. Gibson had 7 career home runs at Yankee Stadium. We're going to go the next stop on this tour, by the way, and Gibson now had homers in 2 big league ballparks, Ford Field and Yankee Stadium. The next stop was Cleveland Stadium. It was built in 1931. The first ball game played there was between the Homestead Grays and the Kansas City Monarchs. The Grays won 9-1 on August 30th. On August 4th, a team with the best players from the Grays and the Crawfords played in Cleveland Stadium against a team of white players advertised as the American League All-Stars. Well, they really weren't quite the American League All-Stars. They had a couple of players who played in the American League, but most of the players were semi-pros. They weren't that good a team. The Grays Crawford team won 18-0, and Gibson hit the first 2 home runs in the history of Cleveland Stadium. He now had homers at 4 big league ballparks. I guess I missed one in here, but we'll get to it. The other ballpark in Cleveland, the Crawfords with Josh Gibson played the Chicago American Giants at League Park, also used by the Cleveland Indians. The Indians used both League Park and Cleveland Stadium through 1946. Josh Gibson homered in the ninth inning of that game on July 23rd, 1930, to tie the game, and the Crawfords won it in 12 innings. In that game, he hit for the cycle, 2 singles, a double, a triple, and a homer, and he walked in the game. The next ballpark we're going to talk about is Baker Bowl. Baker Bowl was the home of the Philadelphia Phillies from 1895 through 1938. Most black ball games in Philadelphia were played at Parkside Field, which was at 44th and Parkside, or Passon Field, located at 48th and Spruce. Gibson had 16 home runs at Parkside, and making it one of his biggest locations. The Crawfords first played at Baker Bowl on July 10th, 1934, and on August 20, 1934, in the first game of doubleheader, Gibson hit 2 home runs and drove in 7 of his team's runs in an 8-2 win against Philadelphia. Josh Gibson was now up to 6 ballparks. A new team at Ebbets Field, and a new ballpark for Josh to play at. Abe and Effa Manley started the Eagles in 1935. The Brooklyn Eagles played their home games at Ebbets Field. Josh Gibson first played at Ebbets Field when he was with the Crawfords. On July 14th, 1935, Josh hit a home run when the Crawfords defeated the Eagles in the first game of a doubleheader, and Gibson was now up to 7 big league ballparks. As for the Eagles, they moved to Newark in 1936 and were a great Negro League team in Newark from 1937 through 1948, when the Manleys sold the team. The Crawfords. The Pittsburgh Crawfords won the National League, Negro National League title in 1935. And during that season, Josh Gibson homered in still another big league ballpark. This ballpark was Borchert Field. Borchert Field in Milwaukee had been used for 20 games by the American Association's Brewers back in 1891. For the next 60 years, it was used for minor league games and Negro League games on occasion. Josh homered there on August 28, 1935, against the Chicago American Giants as they were barnstorming. In 1937, Josh Gibson, after 5 seasons with the Crawfords, was back with the Grays. From 1937 through 1945, the Grays won the Negro National League pennant 8 times in 9 seasons, and he hit homers in even more ballparks, 2 in 1937. These are the 2: American Giants Park in Chicago and Oriole Park in Baltimore. Now, that Oriole Park obviously does not look much like the current version of Orioles Park. American Giants Ballpark in Chicago, it was used by the Chicago White Sox when they were first in the American League. It was called Southside Park in those days, and the White Sox played for 10 years there before they moved to Comiskey Park. And the local black teams took over that ballpark after the White Sox left. When Gibson played, it was called American Giants Ballpark or Cole's American Giants Ballpark. He hit a home run there on August 29th, 1937, off Willie Cornelius in the 6th inning of a first game of a doubleheader with the American Giants. He also tripled in the fourth inning as the Grays won 4-2. And he was up to 9 ballparks. And he would add the next ballpark very quickly. It was at Oriole Park. Now, 1914 and 1915, it was called Terrapin Field, and it was used by the Federal League team. In 1916, the minor league Baltimore team moved in there, and it became known as Orioles Park. That was the team owned by Jack Dunn, and it was the dynasty team of the early period of the International League. Negro League games were played there on occasion, but most Negro League games were played at Bugle Field. On September 26, 1937, 2 games of a year-end series between the Grays and Chicago were played in Baltimore. In the first game, Gibson homered and tripled, but the Grays lost. But the Grays did go on to win the series, and he was up to 10 ballparks. The Homestead Grays traveled to upstate New York during the season. They did this quite often. And they played at Offerman Stadium. Offerman Stadium was originally called Olympic Park and later called the Buffalo Baseball Ballpark. It was a big league ballpark in 1890 when the Players League used it for their home games. Gibson first played there with the Crawfords in 1936, and he homered there twice with the Grays on August 3rd, 1938, as they beat the Eagles 20-8. And again, it was a single, 2 doubles, and 2 home runs. How did Josh do in New York City? There were 3 big league ballparks in New York City when Gibson played. He hit 7 homers at Yankee Stadium, we've discussed. His second and last homer at Ebbets Field came in 1942. And the Polo Grounds is the next one. He hit his first homer at the Polo Grounds on July 25th, 1943 against the Philadelphia Stars. He hit 4 homers in all at the Polo Grounds. And in New York, there was baseball all over the place. Dyckman Oval was used by the Negro Leagues until 1938 or so, and he had 5 home runs there. Dexter Park, which is on the Brooklyn-Queens border, was home for the Negro Leagues for many years and also to the Brooklyn Bushwicks. And he played against the Farmers at their ballpark, at Erasmus Field, and at the Sherwood Oval. And the semi-pro ball fans were as supportive of the semi-pro game in New York as the fans were at the Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, and Ebbets Field. How about Chicago? Well, American Giants ballpark, he homered there, but obviously we're all more familiar with Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park. And Josh Gibson hit home runs at each of those ballparks. Wrigley Field. This is obviously a more current picture of Wrigley Field, but Josh Gibson only played there once. Wrigley Field didn't house Negro League Baseball, but on August 29th of 1943, he did homer against Satchel Paige of the Kansas City Monarchs, as Wrigley Field was used as a neutral site in a game between the Grays and the Monarchs. But Comiskey Park, it would take him a while to get his home run at Comiskey Park, although he played there quite often. Philadelphia, Shibe Park. We had spoken about Baker Bowl. We had spoken about Bigler. We spoke about the other 2 ballparks in Philadelphia. But Shibe Park was not near the black fan base. And after 1938, Shibe Park was home to both the Phillies and the A's. There were not too many open dates, even if they wanted to play the Negro League games there. But on July 18th, 1944, Gibson hit a 3-run homer at Shibe Park as the Grays beat the Elite Giants 11-4. It was reported in the Philadelphia Inquirer that Gibson had now homered in each big league ballpark in which he had played. The announcement, unfortunately, was premature and also didn't include all the ballparks in which he had homered. We have here the scorecard from that game on July 18th, 1944. And if you look down, you see the Grays lineup by Cool Papa Bell, Jerry Benjamin, Sam Bankhead, Buck Leonard, then Gibson, and the rest of that lineup. It was a great lineup for a great number of years. You see a star next to Gibson's name. He hit the home run in the first inning. Playing for the Baltimore Elite Giants, Henry Kimbrough, Tommy Butts, George Scales, and batting fourth, Roy Campanella, who was just a young man at the time. He had made his debut at the age of 15 with the Elite Giants back in 1937. So we don't have that many scorecards, but we have this one. Okay, travels to Alabama. When Gibson played, Negro League teams, for the most part, played in the industrialized North. You had two teams, Negro American League teams in the South, the Birmingham Black Barons and the Memphis Red Sox. The Black Barons were a force from 1937 through 1960. They played at Rickwood Field. I was asked once, did Gibson hit a home run at Rickwood Field? I said, yes. That home run came on September 17th, 1944, and it was in the Negro League World Series. The Negro League World Series went to any number of ballparks, and that year they began the Negro League World Series at Rickwood. It might have been Gibson's first game ever at Rickwood Field, and he homered. And of course, this year they did have the ceremony in June at Rickwood Field. We can't forget the Motor City, but no games involving Black players were held at Briggs Stadium, home of the Tigers, until the 1940s. Josh Gibson played there for the first time on September 4th, 1944, but beyond the scores, details of that doubleheader are not available. The Cubans swept the Grays as Pat Scalberry and Louis Tiant were the winning pitchers. Gibson next played there on June 3rd, 1945. The Grays defeated Baltimore, and he homered that day in the second game of the doubleheader. And then it was back to Comiskey Park. Gibson had played at Comiskey Park quite often. He played there in 9 East-West games. He had 14 hits and in 29 at-bats, 483 batting average. He hit one to the deepest part of the ballpark, but it just didn't go out. It went for a double, and that was in 1938. But he had never homered there. On July 21, 1946, Gibson hit a home run in the 6th inning to tie the game at 3-3, and the Grays went on to win it. And that brought the count to 18 ballparks for Josh Gibson. But there were 2 ballparks in which he did not homer. Crossley Field, we just don't know if he did it. Leo DeRocher had said that Gibson homered there in a barnstorming game in the 30s, but we don't have the details. We don't have the documentation. It said he homered there on October 4th, 1933, but researchers have yet to find the details. He may have hit there a homer there on August 26th, 1943. The Braves scored enough runs. They defeated the Atlanta Black Crackers in an exhibition game, 14-6. But again, we do not have the details. Muehlebach Field in Kansas City, which became a big league ballpark after Josh Gibson played there. On July 17th, 1930, the Grays and the Monarchs played a series of games that took them to 10 ballparks in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Then they traveled to Kansas City. They played 3 games in Kansas City at the beginning of August, but Gibson did not hit a home run. The only other time Gibson played in this ballpark was during the 1942 Negro League World Series. He did not homer then either. And as we know, in 1955, the ballpark became Kansas City's municipal stadium, and the A's played there for 13 years. And since 1995, Kansas City has been the home of the Negro League Baseball Museum. Griffith Stadium, that alone we have to have a page for. 29 home runs, his last one being September 15th, 46. His productivity was right there with some of the greats of the game. Gibson had 1 home run per 5.62 games. Ruth, 1 per 5.03 games. Colavito was the most productive, 1 per 2.375 games. In 1938, and this is recent research, we were looking for other stuff and found out about this. Josh Gibson homered 4 times in a game at against the Memphis Red Sox in Zanesville, Ohio, July 28, 1938. And by the way, that achievement is now included at the Hall of Fame, where they showed the players who homered 4 times in a game. We don't have a box score for the game. And the article there interestingly said that in a season, Gibson collected an average of 10 4-baggers per week. Well, no, he never averaged anywhere close to that. But he did have 10 home runs in 9 games during a week from July 23rd through July 30th, 1938, all against the Memphis Red Sox, during the barnstorming tour from Monessen, Pennsylvania, to Dayton, Ohio, Zanesville, Greensburg, PA, and Middletown, PA. 1943, we talk about that great season he had. But there's more of 1943. He had a pretty good batting average that year. Nobody has ever hit more than 466 in a regular season. That is the all-time record. He drove in 112 runs in those 70 games he played in that season. And Gibson's total home run count in 1943 was 25. And he played in other ballparks, as we know. He played at Greenleaf Field, which was the home of the Crawfords. He hit 31 home runs there. He homered at 112 ballparks in all. I was thinking of saying from Natchez to Mobile, from Memphis to St. Joe, but Memphis was the only place he homered in amongst those 4 places. He had more home runs at night than anybody else, black or white, until well into the 1950s. In his last year, it was 1946. As we've mentioned, we don't have an accurate count. Per seam heads, they included 44 of his Mexican League home runs, and he played those in Mexican League in 1940 and 1941. Interestingly enough, he came back to the United States in 1940 for 1 game at Griffith Stadium in August, and he hit a home run in the doubleheader. It is amazing. He'd play in a ballpark once and a homer there, be it St. Louis, be it Chicago. It is just phenomenal. We don't know all the home runs. He's at 419. Per seam heads, his all-inclusive career batting average was 366 in 939 games. Baseball Reference only includes his Negro League games and does not include his games in 1930, 1931, and 1932, where his teams were playing independently. So his regular season was 373, according to what's out on Baseball Reference. Here is Gibson's home runs by year. He started with, in 1930, he only played the end of the season. He had 9. 1931, he had 42, many of them in barnstorming games. In the U.S., his biggest home run year, according to what I found, is 1938 when he had 36. In foreign countries, he had 13 in Puerto Rico and 41 and 42 in 41-42. He had 6 in 1939-40. He also homered in Venezuela. He opened in Cuba. He homered in the Dominican Republic. His overall stats in seam heads, as I said, 366 batting average. That only includes games for which they have box scores and are league games. Baseball Reference has 373, but does not include those 3 years from 30 to 32. It has one game in 30 where he, according to their research, played a game with the Memphis Red Sox. The independent Negro League games for Josh Gibson from 1930 to 32, his overall average in those 3 years was 328. So if we include those games in his totals, that brings his average down to 364. So research is still ongoing. What the final numbers will be, we don't know. This is my contact information. If anybody wants to look at what I've written or get in touch with me, you can. And that is my presentation. We'll open it up for questions now.
You're muted, Ted. You're muted.
Oh, I'm muted?
Ted is.
Oh, Ted is.
Sorry about that. And what I was saying was I have yet to visit the question. So I'm going to do that right now, but I'm going to give Alan a question of mine, and I'd love to hear his answer. And I'll be back with questions. If baseball was integrated in 1930 and Josh Gibson enjoyed a 17-year career in the majors, how many home runs do you think he would hit? And do you think he would remain as a catcher?
As for his remaining as a catcher, probably, but you can't tell what happened. There were a couple of real good catchers on the teams where he played. Ewing and the Crawfords. When he was with the Grays, Tommy Dukes was with the team. He took over when Josh Gibson went to the Dominican Republic for 5 weeks in 1937, and hit 7 home runs. So, and his backup catcher Gaston was very good. So, and Gibson did play a lot in the outfield, but I think he would have been primarily.
Here's a question.
And how many home runs would he have hit? At least 500. At least 500. you can't tell what would have happened. He had a weakness in a way. He was a dead straight ahead out hitter. In the ballparks that they played in those days had deep center fields, Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, uh, the White Sox ballpark. That if he were a pull hitter, he would have probably gone over 600 home runs easily. But hitting it to straight center field, a lot of balls stayed in the ballpark that would have gone out in current ballparks.
This isn't a question, but I have to read it because Nick is oh so right. Nick says, Alan, thank you for an outstanding presentation. I can't even imagine the time and effort you spent on all your research. Any comments there, Alan?
Yeah, I speak about this. I have over here a few books. It all started for me, my research, with my book, with our book, Bittersweet Goodbye, about the 1948 season. And then I started doing ballpark stories. And it was with the ballpark story on Shibe Park here that I read about his supposed having hit home runs in all of those ballparks. And I then in 2020 started Gibson in earnest, and I was privileged to write the story for Gibson here. But I would like to speak a little bit outside the box about what happened in 2020 because it deserves mention. 2020 was the year of the pandemic. I had proposed talking about Gibson at the convention. I did my work on March 8th. I was in Florida in a hotel room. Said it was the deadline for submitting abstracts. So I submitted 4 abstracts, one about Gibson, and started to do some work on Gibson. Ultimately, another one of my abstracts was selected for what became a virtual meeting in 2020. And then I submitted my article to the BRJ. Sometime between when I submitted my article to the BRJ in early May until the final version got done in September, things happened in this country that shed light on any number of issues inside and outside of baseball, including the momentum to say the Negro Leagues were major leagues, etc. So my story became the cover story, which was a shock to me. And Gary did a great piece of work on the art. And then after determining where he hit the home runs in the big league ballparks, then the count began. And I have a spreadsheet, a game log. I have 1,700 games played by the Grays and the Crawfords during the time he was with them. He did not play too much with barnstorming teams. He did not play in California with the California Winter League. So the furthest west he ever hit a home run was in Texas and Oklahoma during exhibitions. So the research goes on. I'm with Retrosheet. We are soon with Retrosheet going to do 1936. We're going backwards. So I'm quite sure Tom Stress will find some more games in 1936 that I haven't found yet. And we'll see if he had home runs there. I expect the count to grow. I don't think it's going to be much more than 450 by the time we finish. And to answer those folks about games not being reported and there being 800, no. When Josh Gibson hit a home run, it was reported. It might be the only thing reported about a given game, but it will be there. No box score will be there, maybe not even a line score, but it says Josh Gibson homered. And my rules for counting a home run for Josh Gibson: did it go over the fence? And did people pay for admission to the game? So I have a very broad number of games, a lot of semi-pro games, a lot of exhibition, but might not be included by seam heads.
Questions are rolling in now. Paul Julian has two questions. He wants to know if you were able to document the home run he hit against Martin Diego in the 1935 playoffs. And Bill Veck claimed that Josh hit one to center field. Do you know if the home run he hit in Comiskey was in center field?
In all likelihood, it was. I'd have to research it. And what was the other question you had?
The homer off Diego in the 35 World Series or playoff.
Yeah. Well, hold on a second.
I
won't
think you
share.
have that one.
Okay.
The newspaper had it.
Okay. Hopefully you're not seeing what I'm doing now, but if you are, you are.
We're not saying.
Okay. I have a Josh Gibson log. 1935.
September, I think.
And when who was Diego with? He was with the Cubans, right?
There were Cubans in the playoffs.
He hit one on September 23rd, 1935. Let's see. No, they played. The latest home run I have him. Oh, and then some other clown named Dixon hit a home run that day too. He hit a home run with the Crawfords against the Cubans at 44th and Parkside in Philadelphia. And as I say, on that day, Oscar Charleston hit a home run, Rap Dixon hit a home run, and Clyde Spearman hit a home run. I do not know if on that day Diego was pitching or not.
Okay. And then Michael Marsh has a question.
Yeah.
And this is a tough one because you never saw Gibson bat. However, does his batting style, does Gibson's batting style remind you of any current or past major league player?
Tough to say. It was a fluid swing, akin to Mantle hitting right-handed, and it's powerful.
I guess that answers the question. Akin to Mantle. I don't have any more from the audience, but I do have one for you.
More, Ted. If not, we'll just go ahead and get ready for next time. But we'll take one more if anybody has one more.
Yeah, and I have one. So I ask everybody this, and you might as well take a crack at it, Alan.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have an answer unless you've thought about it. But how many Negro League players, in your opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame? There are 137 traditional major leaguers who played prior to Jackie in the Hall. How many Negro leaguers do you think should be in?
I would say at least 25, probably. I would.
There's 30. There's 28 now.
Yeah,
there's 28 now.
I would say doubling that is not unconscionable, and we all know we had the Malloy Conference. You spoke for Rap Dixon, of course. That session you did, two other players were recommended. In the afternoon, two other people, I won't call them players because one was the Rabbit, Martinez, and the other one was the owner, J.B. Martin, who should definitely be considered. I think the Radcliffe brothers were very good. Out on the SABR Bio-Project, we have a bio of Sammy Hughes. It's an excellent bio. I really forget who wrote it, and made a very valid argument for Sammy Hughes to be in the Hall of Fame. So it's not going to be easy. I'll tell you right now, we are at a situation with the Hall of Fame. They like breathing people. That's the Hall of Fame. So now the Veterans Committee is anything prior to 1980, which is outrageous. I feel that Doc Adams should be in the Hall of Fame and should have been on the ballot the last time he was eligible, but he wasn't. And selecting people prior to 1980, you're going to be leaving off a whole lot of good and worthy people, black and white, by doing it. And it's regrettable that the Hall of Fame has taken that step.
Thank you, Alan. That was just the answer I was looking for. Thank you. So yours, Sean.
All right, hey, Alan, thanks again. Great presentation. Learned a lot about Josh, and I hope everybody else did. As we wrap up, again, thank everybody for joining us. Our next presentation will be December 14th. Originally was December 7th. Gary Ashwell asked us to move it back to the 14th. So our last speaker will be Gary Ashwell from Seamheads. Please join us then. And that will be December 14th. And again, as I said before, if there's anyone on here who would love to be involved in our speaker series for next year, please reach out to myself, Ted, or Tom Kern. Or if you know anyone who may be interested in being a speaker next year, please reach out to us. This recording will be sent to Alan. So if anybody wants to see this again, please contact Alan Cohen through either social media or through his contact information right here. So everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully
Great job.
I will see you in December. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan, stay on.
Yeah.